When we're looking at qualitative studies and we're looking at the credibility and trustworthiness of the studies, the previous video talked about approaches to enhancing the trustworthiness during data collection. So once we've collected the data, we have to code it and we have to analyze it to actually figure out what the findings of our qualitative study are. So in this presentation, I'm briefly going to describe some of the strategies that qualitative researchers use during that coding and analysis phase. So first of all, when we look at investigator triangulation, we talked about this a little bit in a previous video, but it holds true here as well. 2 or more researchers must, not should, but must be involved in all of the interpretation and analysis of the data that they have. If just one person is making the decisions, then we open up the door for bias, and that decreases the believability of the study and significantly influences the trustworthiness in a negative manner. So in the methods section, when they're talking about their data analysis plan, they should specifically talk about which researchers were involved in analysis. And a lot of times you'll see that they say, researchers 1 and 2 did the data analysis. If there were any disagreements with coding, then the third researcher, this person, came in and helped them make a final decision. And that's best case scenario. That's what you should see in research studies. With stepwise replication, that does not always happen, but it's a really strong strategy to use. Basically, what that means is you take, instead of having one researcher and one researcher kind of both work together on and analyzing and coding the data, you actually have 2 groups of people. So you might have 3 researchers over here and 3 researchers over here. Both groups work separately and they do not communicate during this analysis process. They both have copies of all the transcripts of the interviews. This group over here does their own separate analysis. This group over here does their own analysis without crossing over and talking amongst one another or between one another. Once everybody's finished in both groups, then both groups come together and they say, okay, how closely were our outcomes? Did our themes match? Did we get in the general ballpark? It's called replication because it's almost like you're redoing your study a second time, because you really have 2 research teams who are analyzing your data in separate ways. It's a really strong strategy. You don't see it a whole lot because it takes a lot of time and a lot of manpower to do that, but it's a really good strength. With theory triangulation, this is especially common in grounded theory studies when you are trying to build a new middle range theory that is grounded in the data that your participants gave you. So as you're developing this new theory, you actually want to compare it against another theory out there. So the use of other competing theories to see, does this theory that you're just now making hold up when scrutinized against this other pre-existing theory out there? And if it does, then that lends further credibility to the study and the way you've done your analysis and your coding of your study. Similar to that, trying to prove yourself wrong, in essence, is disfirming evidence or negative case analysis, especially when we're trying to build a new theory through grounded theory studies. We want to make sure that we have tried to poke holes in this theory that we're building. We want to try to find cases and evidence that contradicts what we think. So we may actually go out and talk to and interview some other people who have different situations that we've talked to see if they support our growing theory or if their story is totally out in left field. Okay, by doing that, it makes us look at things from a well-rounded picture. It keeps us from being totally biased and slanting the information in the way we want it to go, because that's definitely not trustworthy. You know, if I already know from the onset what I think the themes are going to be, and I just go with that and don't listen to what the people actually say and try to talk to different types of people, then I don't have a very good theory that I'm building. And then lastly, during analysis, we want to make sure we've done it right. So sometimes you can bring in a peer who is very experienced with qualitative research and data analysis, and have them look over your notes, have them look over the transcripts, show them your decision-making trail, and let them kind of go through and see where your strengths and weaknesses lie well before you get into the final typing up the manuscript and all of that. So this is a peer that you know who has some experience and that can give you some good feedback. Even more formal is a formal inquiry audit. This is an expert whom you don't really have a good relationship with, and you actually call them in and as a consultant to come in and really scrutinize every document, every decision trail, everything that you have. And they pretty much run their own little analysis, well, not little, they run their own analysis on your data and see how well it matches up to what you came up with, because that's really high level. Okay, it costs money. You're hiring a consultant whom you don't know, but they are an expert and well respected in the field. So if they agree with your outcomes, then you've got the gold stamp of approval. It's about as trustworthy as you can get for qualitative research. So those are just a couple of the things that you may read in studies. The most common is investigator triangulation. If you do not see a mention of 2 or more researchers doing the data analysis, then that is a major red flag for that study. One person should not be doing that at any time. All right. Thanks for listening.